In the quiet world of antique picking, where the thrill of discovery and the joy of preservation reign supreme, a sinister tragedy has unfolded that will forever change how we view one of America's most beloved reality shows. What began as rumors of a falling out between two friends spiraled into something far more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. Mike Wolfe and Frank Fritz weren't just co-hosts of American Pickers, they were cultural icons who brought the excitement of finding forgotten treasures into millions of homes. But beneath the surface of this seemingly innocent entertainment lay a dark web of jealousy, betrayal, and ultimately, murder. The story I'm about to tell you isn't just another celebrity scandal. It's a haunting tale of how ambition corrupted a friendship and led to an unthinkable crime that shocked the nation. As we piece together this troubling puzzle, we'll uncover the calculated steps that transformed a beloved treasure hunter into a cold-blooded killer, and how the pursuit of fame and fortune can poison even the most genuine relationships. The news first broke as a somber announcement. Frank Fritz, the beloved co-host of American Pickers, had passed away due to complications from a stroke, a condition he had been battling since 2022. Fans mourned the loss of the passionate collector whose genuine enthusiasm and down-to-earth personality had made him a household name. Social media flooded with tributes to the man who had taught America to see value in what others had discarded. His knack for finding motorcycles and toys had endeared him to viewers who appreciated his specific expertise and straightforward approach. Frank's authenticity had been a cornerstone of the show's appeal. He wasn't a polished television personality, but a real picker with decades of experience and an eye for overlooked treasures. But as the initial shock of Frank's passing began to settle, whispers of something more sinister started to emerge. What initially appeared to be a tragic but natural end to a life well lived would soon unravel into one of the most disturbing cases of betrayal in television history. The investigation began routinely enough, with authorities conducting standard procedures following an unexpected death. However, a discovery at Frank's home would change everything: an empty pill bottle bearing Mike Wolfe's fingerprints. This seemingly insignificant detail triggered a deeper probe that would expose a horrifying truth. Toxicology reports revealed unusually high levels of fentanyl in Frank's system, a powerful opioid that had not been prescribed to him. As investigators dug deeper, more damning evidence emerged. Wolfe's internet search history revealed research into methods to simulate stroke-like symptoms and hard-to-detect poisons, with searches dating back nearly 6 months before Frank's death. Security cameras had captured Wolfe's vehicle near Frank's residence late at night, just hours before the emergency call reporting Frank unresponsive. Further investigation revealed that Wolfe had purchased the fentanyl through an elaborate chain of connections, carefully covering his tracks, but not carefully enough. What had appeared to be a tragic medical complication was now looking like a carefully orchestrated murder planned over months by someone Frank had once called a friend. In the days following Frank's death, Mike Wolfe's behavior raised red flags that, in retrospect, seem like glaring signs of guilt. While publicly expressing grief over the loss of his brother and friend, behind the scenes, Wolfe was maneuvering to acquire rights to Frank's name and likeness for commercial projects. He approached the History Channel with proposals for tribute merchandise and special episodes that would have netted him substantial profits. Even more suspicious was the revelation of Frank's will, which surprisingly bequeathed his substantial estate to Wolfe, a document signed during a period when Frank's health challenges had raised serious questions about his mental capacity. Investigators later discovered that the attorney who had overseen the signing of the will had close financial ties to Wolfe. Wolfe quickly moved to seize control of valuable antiques and intellectual properties associated with Frank, actions that painted a picture not of a grieving friend, but of an opportunist capitalizing on tragedy. When Frank's storage facilities were opened, several valuable items documented in Frank's personal inventory were mysteriously missing, later discovered in a warehouse leased by Wolfe under a company name. Perhaps most damning was the discovery of Wolfe's personal diaries, which detailed growing frustrations with Frank and chillingly expressed a desire to eliminate him as an obstacle to his ambitions. As the case moved to trial, the prosecution methodically built a narrative of betrayal driven by greed and resentment. Former production crew members testified about the growing tension between the co-hosts, revealing how Wolfe had increasingly tried to minimize Frank's role in the show. One producer recounted overhearing Wolfe say, "This show only needs one picker, and we all know who that should be." Testimonies revealed how Wolfe's attitude toward Frank had shifted as Frank's health declined, seeing his co-host not as a partner but as a liability to the brand he was trying to build. Financial records exposed Wolfe's calculated business restructuring designed to gain control over Frank's intellectual property, including the registration of trademarks related to Frank's catchphrases and picking style just weeks before his death. Perhaps most shocking was the revelation that Wolfe had taken out a substantial insurance policy with Frank as the beneficiary shortly before his death, a policy worth $3,500,000 that would have provided ample funding for Wolfe's ambitious expansion plans for the American Pickers franchise. The jury listened in stunned silence as the prosecution painted the picture of a man who had meticulously planned the murder of his longtime friend for financial gain, fame, and complete control of the empire they had built together. The courtroom became the stage for revealing Wolfe's true character, stripped of the charming persona that had endeared him to millions of viewers. In one dramatic moment that became emblematic of the trial, Wolfe exploded at the prosecutor, shouting, "You don't understand what it's like to build something from nothing and have to watch someone else profit by smiling for the cameras." This outburst provided a glimpse into the deep resentment and jealousy that had festered for years beneath his affable exterior. Former colleagues testified about Wolfe's increasing irritation whenever Frank received positive press or fan attention. One crew member recalled Wolfe refusing to film certain segments if they highlighted Frank's expertise too prominently. The defense team's attempts to portray Wolfe as a loyal friend who wanted to reconcile with Frank quickly crumbled under the weight of overwhelming evidence. When Frank's doctor testified that he had not prescribed the lethal dose of fentanyl found in Frank's system, and furthermore that Frank had been making significant progress in his recovery, any remaining doubt about Wolfe's guilt vanished. The medical examiner confirmed that without the introduction of fentanyl, Frank would likely have continued his recovery with a good prognosis. The verdict came swiftly. Guilty on all counts. Mike Wolfe, once beloved by millions, was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the gavel fell, marking the formal end to this tragic saga, the courtroom fell silent, the weight of betrayal hanging heavy in the air. Frank Fritz's family wept quietly, finding little solace in the justice served. His sister, speaking briefly to reporters outside the courthouse, said simply, "No punishment can bring back my brother or erase the betrayal by someone he considered family." For them, and for the millions who had invited these men into their homes through television, nothing could undo the irreparable damage done or bring back the man whose passion for preserving America's overlooked treasures had inspired so many. As Wolfe was led away in handcuffs, the stark contrast between his former life as a celebrated television personality and his new reality as a convicted murderer was not lost on those present. The fallout from Wolfe's conviction rippled far beyond the courtroom. For fans of American Pickers, the revelation was particularly painful. For years they had watched what they believed was genuine friendship between two passionate collectors, sharing the excitement of the hunt and the satisfaction of preserving pieces of American history. The chemistry between Mike and Frank had been a central part of the show's appeal, making the betrayal all the more shocking. Online forums and social media groups that had once celebrated the show became spaces of collective grief and disillusionment. "It feels like finding out your favorite uncle is a monster," wrote one longtime fan in a widely shared post. Viewers began questioning everything they had believed about the show, including the authenticity of relationships they had witnessed on screen. The History Channel moved quickly to distance itself from the scandal, removing all episodes featuring Mike Wolfe and issuing statements of shock and sympathy for Fritz's family. major sponsors pulled their support, signaling the uncertain future of a show that had once been a cornerstone of reality television. The legal battles continued even after the criminal case concluded, as Frank's biological father, William Fritz, challenged the validity of the will that had named Wolfe as the sole beneficiary. The lawsuit exposed further evidence of Wolfe's manipulation, including his efforts to acquire rare antiques that had never been featured on television, and attempts to control Frank's legacy for his own gain. Court documents revealed that Wolfe had approached several museums about creating Frank Fritz collections that would tour the country, deals that would have generated substantial income while using Frank's name and reputation. Handwriting experts testified that certain sections of the will contained inconsistencies with Frank's known signature, suggesting possible forgery. These revelations only reinforced the image of a man consumed by greed and willing to betray his closest friend for personal enrichment. The outcome of the estate battle remains pending, but it has added another layer of complexity to an already devastating story, and potentially threatens to strip Wolfe of any remaining financial benefit from his heinous acts. Psychologists who analyzed Wolfe's behavior during and before the trial suggested he displayed classic signs of narcissistic personality disorder, characterized by grandiosity, lack of empathy, and an insatiable need for admiration and control. Dr. Robert Keller, a forensic psychologist who reviewed the case, noted that years of fame and success likely exacerbated these tendencies, creating a dangerous cocktail of entitlement and detachment. Celebrity status can sometimes amplify existing narcissistic traits, Dr. Keller explained. The constant validation, power, and public adjuration can create a distorted sense of reality where the individual feels entitled to whatever they desire, regardless of ethical or legal boundaries. Entries from Wolfe's personal journals revealed a man who had come to see his co-host not as a partner or friend, but as an obstacle to overcome. In one particularly disturbing entry, Wolfe had written, "With Frank gone, there would be no one to challenge my vision for what this show could become. Sometimes the only way forward is to cut away the dead weight." Such writings offered a chilling glimpse into the mind of someone who had calculated that murder was an acceptable solution to a professional rivalry, and who had convinced himself that he was somehow entitled to make that choice. Today, the future of American Pickers remains uncertain. The show that had celebrated the joy of uncovering forgotten treasures has itself become tarnished by the dark secrets uncovered in Wolfe's trial. Some industry experts believe the show could never recover from such a profound betrayal of public trust, while others suggest that a complete rebranding might allow the concept to survive in some form. Danielle Colby, the shop manager who had worked alongside both men for years, has remained largely silent about the tragedy, though sources close to her indicate she was devastated and blindsided by the revelations. What is certain is that Frank Fritz's legacy has been forever altered. No longer just remembered for his knowledge of antiques and engaging personality, but now also as the victim of one of television's most shocking crimes. Those who worked alongside both men describe a noticeable change in dynamics in the years leading up to Fritz's death, with Wolfe becoming increasingly controlling and Fritz being gradually sidelined from what had once been an equal partnership. There were definitely tensions that the cameras didn't capture, one former crew member revealed. Mike would sometimes reshoot segments to make sure he got the final word or the big discovery. It was subtle at first, but became more obvious over time. The production company behind American Pickers has faced intense scrutiny for potentially missing warning signs of the deteriorating relationship. Internal emails obtained during the investigation showed that several staff members had expressed concerns about Wolfe's behavior toward Fritz, particularly after Frank's initial health problems began. These warnings were apparently dismissed as typical creative differences between personalities. The company has since implemented new protocols for reporting hostile workplace behavior and monitoring the well-being of on-screen talent, though for many, these measures come tragically too late. Several former employees have come forward with stories suggesting that the production prioritized ratings and Wolfe's growing star power over addressing the increasingly toxic dynamics behind the scenes. As we reflect on this tragic story, we're left to ponder the fragility of the relationships we witness through the lens of television. The parasocial connections we form with personalities on screen can create illusions of intimacy and knowledge that reality often contradicts. Behind the carefully edited footage and curated public personas often lie more complex and sometimes darker truths. Frank Fritz spent his life teaching America to look beyond the rust and dust, to find value in forgotten objects. Perhaps his final, unintended legacy is teaching us to look more critically at the entertainment we consume and the personalities we elevate to celebrity status. His genuine passion for preservation stands in stark contrast to the calculated betrayal that ended his life, a reminder that the authentic values he embodied are far more precious than fame or fortune. The story of Frank Fritz and Mike Wolfe is ultimately a cautionary tale about how ambition, unchecked by empathy, can corrupt even the most promising partnerships. It reminds us that beneath the veneer of televised camaraderie can lie currents of jealousy, resentment, and betrayal. For the fans who grew up watching these two friends travel the backroads of America, uncovering hidden treasures and sharing the stories behind them, the reality is heartbreaking. But perhaps the most important lesson from this tragedy is that true value isn't found in possessions or fame, but in genuine connections built on trust and mutual respect, the very things that were sacrificed in pursuit of control and power. As we close this dark chapter in television history, we honor the memory of Frank Fritz not just as a picker of antiques, but as a reminder of the true treasures in life: honesty, friendship, and integrity, values that no amount of fame or fortune can replace.